Okay, guys, I left off with the BFG last time. Um, he was not happy with drinking hot coffee, and he said he'd wish for frobscottle because it helps him make sweet music, which confused the Queen. And you guys know from reading the book previously, when I've been reading it, what frobscottle does. So let's see what happens with that. He doesn't want to sing, Sophie said. He said he wants to make music, the Queen went on. Shall I send for a violin? No, Your Majesty, Sophie said. He's only joking. A sly little smile crossed the BFG's face. Listen, he said, peering down at Sophie. If they ain't having frobscottle in the palace, I can still do some whiz popping perfectly well if I tries hard enough. No, cried Sophie. No, no, don't. No, please don't. I beg you. Well, music is very good for the digestion, the Queen said. When I'm up in Scotland, they play the bagpipes outside the window while I'm eating. Would you play something, BFG? I has Her Majesty's permission, the BFG said, and all at once he let fly with the loudest whiz popper. It sounded as though a bomb had exploded in the room. The Queen jumped. Whoopee! Shouted the BFG. That is better than bag of pops, is it not, Your Majesty? It took the Queen a few seconds to get over the shock. I prefer the bagpipes, the Queen said, but she couldn't stop herself from smiling. During the next 20 minutes, a whole relay of footmen were kept busy hurrying to them from the kitchen, carrying third helpings and fourth helpings and fifth helpings of fried eggs and sausages for the ravenous and delighted BFG. When the BFG had consumed his 72nd fried egg, Mr. Tibbs sidled up to the Queen, and he bent low from the waist, and he whispered in her ear, Chef sends his apologies, Your Majesty, and he says he has no more eggs in the kitchen. What's wrong with the hens? The Queen said. Nothing's wrong with the hens, Your Majesty, Mr. Tibbs said. Then tell them to lay some more, the Queen said. She looked up at the BFG. Would you like some toast and marmalade while you're waiting? She said to him. The toast is finished as well. And the chef says there's no more bread. Well, tell him to make some more, the Queen said. While this was going on, Sophie had been telling the Queen everything, absolutely everything about her visit to Giant Country. The Queen listened, appalled. When Sophie had finished, the Queen looked up at the BFG, who was sitting high above her. He was now eating a sponge cake. Big friendly Giant, she said. Last night those man-eating brutes came to England. Can you remember where they went the night before? The BFG put a whole sponge cake right into his mouth and chewed slowly while he thought about this question. Yes, Your Majesty, he said. I do think I'll remember where they was going off to the night before last. They was galloping off to Sweden for some sweet and sour taste. Fetch me the telephone, the Queen commanded. Mr. Tibbs placed the instrument on the table. The Queen lifted the receiver. Get me the King of Sweden, she said, immediately. And we'll stop.